My name is Kevin Oliveira. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Data Security Solutions at Forcepoint. Today, I'm going to be joined by Mark Bloemsma. He's the Senior Consulting Sales Engineer in EMEA for Forcepoint. And we're going to be talking about this concept of the principle of least privilege and how that is an important area that can be enforced with the new product that we're selling, Forcepoint Data Visibility. And this product then will allow you to be able to see and limit permissions or access to sensitive data to support zero trust. What is principle of least privilege and why is it important? It's often talked about by analysts who cover zero trust. And when they talk about zero trust, they'll say this is actually an important pillar in a total or a complete zero trust solution. And what it is the idea of trying to control access to the most sensitive information by limiting user access to only the files and file shares that they strictly require to do their jobs. And if you do that, and people are limited to just what they need to do their jobs, there really is no friction in terms of the business. The business will run, you won't have complaints. And so there's no reason to give over privileged people. So here's some examples of why this principle is important. Different type of people that are within your organization or situations. The first one is actually a situation, it's the everyone group. And so it's often people call it the all group or the world group. And it's a group where files are put in, and everyone in the company, anyone who's able to log into the organization has access to the files in that group. And that is one of the notorious areas where there's a lot of overprivilege that's done with files. And so that one needs to be watched. Another is the leaver. And so the leaver, that's the type of person, that's the person that's going to be leaving the company. They may have already given their notice. They may be in the process kind of aggressively looking for work. And they often feel like they want to take data with them that they had worked with when they were at their current job, and they feel they have the right to it. And so often they'll stockpile data, and that person may be going out and accessing shares because they've got access, because they want data for their next job. So that's a big point of exfiltration, data exfiltration that needs to be watched, and permissions can help with that. Another area is the temporary worker, contractor, intern. They often can be overshared or they can be overprivileged. They don't have as strong a commitment to the company maybe as the permanent worker. So that's another area. The malicious insider, of course, there's not a lot of them, but they do exist, and they're people internally who find data and look to make money off of it. And their ability to search, and if they're overprivileged and have too much permission, that can be serious. And then, of course, there's the hacker. Hacker gets stolen credentials, gets inside, and they're out looking for data that's useful and valuable. And so all of these problems can be helped if you work with the situation of permissions and apply the principle of least privilege. Forcepoint Data Visibility gives you 360-degree view of permissions for all of the scanned files, all your unstructured files, at rest. And so you're able to see it at a very granular level. It gives you a complete view at each file, as far as who has permission to that file, what shares have permission, or what groups have permission to that file. And then it also talks about, you can look and see individual users and what that individual user has permission to. So you can get a list of that. And then you can also look and see the different groups or shares, like the everyone group, for example, and look at that group and see the permissions. And through continuous monitoring, continually running these types of scans, you can avoid permission creep and have a very strong placement of principle of least privilege and protect your environment. We'll go next to Mark, and he'll give a demo of what this means.
So this is our lab environment where we set up a scan, and the scan is on our file share in this case. System can scan other repositories, but for today, we'll focus on a Active Directory file share. So we have a total amount of files, some classified files and PII files. And the system has also been tied to, in this case, an Active Directory, where we have information on users, groups. We have active users, inactive users, and we can even scan for disabled users. And that relates into the permission creep. Disabled users should not have any file access left anymore. With these scans, we populate a set of reports. I won't go into all of them, just the ones that are related to the permission management. So we have this overall risk report, and that overall risk report gives you a report view on the risk score of your environment. And in this case, the things that are contributing to this overall risk score are critical files that are in the everyone group. So apparently there is quite a few files that are accessible by everybody. So that's 20,000 files in this example out of close to 1 million. And having access to everyone is, of course, a risky thing, because if there's critical files in there, they should not be accessible by the group everyone. And then we have critical files that are accessible by inactive users. So if people have not logged on for 90 days, they are considered inactive. And the question is if they should have access to specific files.
And Mark, so then when we have their content risk score of 8, so how bad is it or good is an 8?
An 8 is out of 10. So 1 being good, or 0, 1 being good, 10 being really bad. So 8 is quite bad.
Okay, so 6 as well.
Quite a big risk.
6 as well, being kind of on the bad side.
Medium, yeah. And if you follow the color scheme, so green would be okay-ish, orange, yellow being intermediate, but red is, of course, bad.
Okay. So out of this risk report, we'd see that there is some serious issues that need to be dealt with in terms of permissions.
Exactly. Yeah, and this being a high level report, obviously for management to be shared, but you can also drill into the more detailed side.
Okay.
Of things. So the other report I wanted to highlight is the user access report, and there you go already in a little bit of detail. I've opened it for the sake of time. You will see, for example, the top 30 users that are member of the most groups. So an administrator being part of 7 groups. Obviously, in a production environment, these numbers will be a little bit higher. And a list of these inactive users, as we said, so users that have not logged in for the last 90 days. These are the high-level overviews. We can also go into great detail on the results. So if I click on these results, and I will filter based on risk to limit the set of files a little bit. So if I have a look at high-risk files first, containing PII and to be considered sensitive, I can see out of those 750 files that we scanned, there's 18 files that the system returns that are qualifying as high risk with PII and sensitivity, which is not a surprise, because part of the reason why things are high risk is based on the fact whether they or not they contain PII and whether or not they are considered sensitive. And sensitive in its turn is defined based on the category, the subcategory, and the classification, which are covered in a separate webinar. Today, we'll focus mainly on the permission level.
And Mark, for Forcepoint Data Visibility, particularly because they make use of the AI ML model to come to some of these conclusions, which of these are results of the AI model analyzing this particular file?
So the classification is based on the AI, the ML machine learning models, the subcategory and the category, and also the PII. Okay. These are all part of that of those machine learning models.
Right. So they should have a high accuracy. And then the risk, it's risk for what? What are they at risk for?
So the risk here in this case is files that are considered deemed sensitive by the machine learning models and are potentially overshared.
Is it a risk then? We're looking at a risk of exfiltration or a risk of compliance? Or
obviously a bit of both, because some of these things go hand in hand, but it's oversharing of data, so over permissioning of information, which is a compliance issue, but obviously also a exfiltration issue, right? If people should not be allowed to touch a file, and they can take it with them.
Okay.
So if I look at this NDA form, for example, I'm assuming it's an NDA form because based on the name, that's safe to assume. I can see the permissions of that file, and I can see there's a couple of individuals that have access. This might be perfectly fine, but I can also see there is this predefined Active Directory group, and there's this lab users group. These probably should not have access to these files, right? Because
Right.
these are groups that are there for specific reasons, but not to interact with sensitive information.
Okay, great. So that would definitely make it a high risk. Then are you able to look at those groups as well?
Yeah, so I can also do the investigation vice versa. So I can go into permission management, and I've seen this lab users group having access to a lot of files, right, or to that specific file. So what if I want to see what other files this group has access to? So I simply look at, search for the group, click on the group, and then the system will return every file that group has specific permissions to.
Right. So it looks like in this situation, the lab user group has access to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be a serious problem, and that would be one you'd want to go after.
Exactly.
Quickly. Okay.
Yeah, you would want to work this out with your Active Directory team or your file share permission team.
Okay.
And by clicking this export button, the system will generate a CSV file with all those file names listed, the path listed, and the group that has access to it. So it's relatively easy to remediate.
Did you want to share any other thing on the permissions, like maybe by user? Can we look at that way?
Yeah, you can also investigate a specific user. So let's take an Eric. So Eric Retta, for example, and I can list all the files that Eric has access to as well.
Okay, sounds like looks like he's got access to everything as well.
Yeah, there's this organization has been over permissive with access to files.
Okay, so also another one, you'd want to do an export and then remediate that to limit the permissions.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate this.
You're welcome.
If you're watching, if you have more questions, we do have more videos on Forcepoint Data Visibility. And so you can find those on the YouTube channel, and they'll go into other aspects beyond just how do we handle permissions. Looks at a number of different areas that this new product is able to give you to help you to create a much more secure environment. Thanks.